It's been over a year since the Benue State government inaugurated its judicial panel of inquiry into police brutality headed by former Chief Judge of the state, Justice Adam Onum, now here to formally submit its findings.
I'm happy to present to you this report.
Recommendations reached according to the panel were based on the impact of the force's human rights abuses.
Of police brutality and abuse of office on victims, including where some persons were brutally murdered by the police in cold blood, leaving families without respective heads and breadwinners. 2, where some persons died in police custody owing to complications arising from torture and or other forms of abuse of police powers, including unwarranted denial of rights to bail. 3, where some persons suffered grievous bodily hurt or non-grievous bodily hurt as defined under law in the hands of the police. And 4, where some items of property were destroyed by the police or unjustly seized and confiscated by the police. 5, where some persons were subjected to intimidation with the sole aim of extorting money from them. And 6, where the police took advantage of its privileged position to refuse to obey judicial orders, particularly over breaches of fundamental rights. The recommendations of the panel are largely dictated by the level of impact on the respective victims and the society in general. The panel was guided in each case by global best practices and dictated by local and international protocol on human and people's rights, including in particular the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as amended, and all other extant laws and rules, enabling the panel in that behalf to ensure the observance of rights of fair hearing to all persons who appeared before it. The panel was also careful to receive and consider only such cases or pieces of evidence as were relevant to its terms of reference, which approach greatly helped the panel to avoid unnecessary delays. The panel has recommended compensations in the total sum of 304,535,095 and 85 kobo to be paid to various categories of victims of police brutality in the state. The panel has also recommended various police officers to the Attorney General of the state for district investigation with a view to prosecuting them for respective crimes arising from respective conduct. The report, along with the record of proceedings of the panel, including copies of all the exhibits tendered before the panel, is submitted to Your Excellency in 50 bound copies for necessary action. The record of proceedings, including the exhibits, is presented in 3 volumes for ease of handling. Volume 1 covers the record of cases of proceedings and exhibits in complaints numbers 1 to 20. Volume 2 covers the record of proceedings and exhibits in complaints numbers 21 to 44, while Volume 3 covers the record of proceedings and exhibits in complaints numbers 45 to 72. We received a total of 72 complaints altogether, some of which were struck out for obvious reasons. And attached to each volume are the instruments of the constitution of the panel, that is Benue State Legal Notice number 4 of 2020, the rules of procedure of the panel published in Benue State Legal Notice number 5 of 2020. The notice to the general public calling for submission of complaints and memoranda published through the print and electronic media. Also attached to each volume of the record is the copy of the only memorandum submitted to the panel on possible reform of Nigeria Police Force. That memo was submitted by Aganya, who was one time a commissioner of police in the state. Unfortunately, he passed on before we could invite him to physically present it before us. All the same, we found very useful points in his submission, which has also affected our report, at least for the recommendations we have made for reform of the police.
Everybody in this country has been perplexed with the high-handedness of some elements of the police force, obviously not in its entirety. A lot of misgivings on the part of the populace had been expressed in the past to no avail. And especially, we've been told that we should not take the laws into our hands. But then we also discovered that the police that is supposed to protect human beings and the properties of this nation, according to the dictates of the law, had been known to be taking laws into their hands as well. And this gave rise to the massive protests that we had earlier this year. It got to a point that some of us began to fear if that protest was ever going to be brought to an end. But thank God, maybe because of the way it was handled, things were handled. And in Benue State, particularly with the way that the governor handled the situation, the ugly side of things that was witnessed in places like Lagos and other cities in the south were never recorded here in Benue State. But that is not to say that Benue State was exempted from what happened, the brutality and the atrocities committed by some of these police members of the police force. And so, the coming in handy of this report is obviously going to do a lot of good to sanitize the police force so that they will discharge their duties according to the rule of the law. What we have seen in the past, some stories told by some people who had been in detention, when they tell you they will send chills into your body. And I think the time has come for us to ride on the side of civilization and handle things in such a manner that human dignity will be preserved. And so I am very happy, Honorable Chairman, to receive the reports, and I will take them to Abuja and submit them to the appropriate quarters. I hope that your findings, because you see, that's another problem. Just in the manner that we have beautiful plans, wonderful budgets, and then when it comes to implementation, it will be zero. My earnest prayer in this regard is that these reports from the 36 states of the Federation, and indeed the Federal Capital Territory, will be looked into by those that are assigned to look into them, and to come out very quickly with recommendations that have to be implemented by the federal authority. That is my prayer. And I hope that with that, we should be looking at the other side of human dignity in this country.
The Judicial Panel of Inquiry into Police Brutality, particularly Special Anti-Robbery Squad Unit, popularly known as SAS, was inaugurated in October last year and given a 6-month time frame to submit its report.